play a vital role in the clean energy economy, from our farmers growing corn and soybeans for biofuels, to our manufacturers creating parts for wind turbines, to our utility workers and workers installing energy efficiency equipment. Nearly every state has seen an increase in clean energy jobs. The sector now employs more than 3.2 million people, outnumbering jobs in fossil fuels almost 3 to 1. These jobs are in a wide range of industries, many of which have had a large presence of small firms. Through innovation and hard work, many small businesses are bringing clean energy technologies to market, creating economic growth and supporting communities across the country. Even large-scale projects such as wind farms and solar arrays create jobs and opportunities for these smaller firms. Moving forward, we need to make sure that we are supporting also our skilled workers, along with building trades and other union apprenticeship programs, which these growing industries rely on to meet their workforce needs. Metal workers, machinists, and truck drivers are among the Americans helping create a more efficient and reliable clean energy future for our country. The clean energy economy has had an especially beneficial impact on small towns and rural areas. Rural communities in the Midwest, in states like Iowa, have experienced notable growth in renewable energy. These industries are proven job creators, adding more than 8,000 new jobs in 2016. This hearing will explore the challenges and opportunities to advancing energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies, and identify what Congress can do to support the small businesses and skilled workforce that are the backbone of a clean energy economy. Being from Iowa, the topic of the hearing has obviously some very special importance to me. Our state is a leader in clean and renewable energy thanks to our strong agricultural industry, investments in wind and solar energy, and strong support from both the public and private sectors. Over a third of the energy generated in Iowa, over 36%, comes from wind. That's more wind energy than any other state, and I do have to note, no, wind energy does not cause cancer. Sadly, I jokingly say that, but unfortunately, we need to say that. I know that is something that the administration and our president has talked about, and it's not true. The facts are that wind energy is good for our communities and good for the environment, and something that we should be respecting and supporting, not making fun of or creating false lies about. We also lead the nation in the production of biofuels, with 4.35 billion gallons of ethanol production and 365 million gallons of biodiesel production in 2018. Renewable fuels make a significant contribution to the Iowa economy. Biofuels support 48,000 jobs in Iowa and have become a critical domestic market for corn and soybeans. However, our renewable fuel sector is facing hard times, which makes this hearing especially timely. Uncertainty surrounding some of the federal policies and incentives that the biofuels industry has come to rely on has thrown its future and the future of my neighbors and our Iowa farmers into jeopardy. This administration's unprecedented use of small refinery waivers have undercut the renewable fuel standard. The approval of these 85 waivers have killed demand for roughly 1.4 billion bushels of corn and are an economic blow to farmers like my own sister and brother-in-law, who are already facing the devastating effects of the prolonged trade war. I am currently working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to call for a federal investigation of the secretive exemption process for small refineries, but the question is whether relief will come soon enough for the biofuels industry. Even some of the biggest companies like ADM have seen profits drop by roughly 40%, and others have been forced to cut production or stop altogether. And this was happening even before the administration granted the additional 31 small refinery waivers for 2018. The expiration of the biodiesel tax credit has also created a huge challenge. This credit has been effective in helping the biodiesel industry develop and compete with the well-established fossil fuel industry. Biodiesel now supports 60,000 jobs and generates more than $11 billion in economic activity annually. Producers are now struggling to survive without the credit. Already, at least 8 biodiesel plants have shut down this year. Another 3 or 4 may close before the end of the month if this credit is not extended. For months now, I have been working hard on bipartisan legislation to renew the biodiesel tax credit. Iowa jobs are quite literally on the line, and we must act now to support and extend these tax credits. While pleased, obviously, that the Ways and Means has marked up a tax credit extender package that includes a 3-year extension of the tax credit, I'll continue to call on the House and Senate leadership to please work together and extend the credit immediately. The renewable fuels industry, like our other renewable energy producers, have fought hard for a seat at the table and are an integral part of the clean energy economy. We are fortunate to have a biodiesel producer actually from Iowa here today to discuss some of the challenges facing the industry. And with that, I again just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here, and I really look forward to our conversation. I hope we all leave here today with a deeper understanding of the future of clean energy and how to better support our small businesses and our workers in these sectors. I also want to take a moment, too, to thank Ranking Member Dr. Joyce, who's here with us today, and would now like to yield to Ranking Member Dr. Joyce for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for addressing such an important issue within hours of us coming back to Washington, addressing preparation for growing the energy economy, the clean energy economy, which is so important to us. Today, our subcommittee will examine the economic opportunities, the challenges, and the clear-cut benefits that clean energy presents to small businesses across our country. My home state of Pennsylvania has an extensive history of supplying the nation with reliable energy. As technology has advanced, our methods have evolved. However, throughout these changes, Pennsylvania has been able to maintain its position as a national leader in the energy economy. Thanks to the vast amounts of natural resources, Pennsylvania maintains its position as the second largest net supplier of energy to all other states. In recent years, we have made impressive advancements to minimize the environmental impact of our energy production. Pennsylvania is home to more than 700 active wind turbines, many of which you'll find within my district, the 13th district. We rank second in the nation in nuclear power generating capacity, and we continue to see that Pennsylvania's private businesses expand their use of solar energy. Pennsylvania is second only to Texas in expanding natural gas reserves, which have more than tripled from 2011 to 2017. And thanks to the development in the Marcellus shale industry, that has successfully occurred. The development of natural gas in Pennsylvania not only is expanding economic opportunities, but it's also helping to drive declining CO2 emissions in the U.S. power sector. According to the EPA, aggregate national emissions of the 6 common pollutants alone dropped an average of 73% from 1970 to 2017, while the gross domestic product grew by over 300%. The emissions reductions have led to dramatic improvements in the quality of the air that we breathe. Between 1990 and 2017, national concentrations of air pollutants improved 80% for lead, 77% for carbon monoxide, 88% for sulfur dioxide, 56% for nitrogen dioxide, and 22% for ozone. As a physician, I understand the importance of clean air for the health of all Americans. And at the same time, we must be careful to balance our desire to reduce emissions with common sense, reasonable reforms that remove regulatory barriers and allow the free market to drive our solutions. We must be practical about where we are as a nation and what we can accomplish together to develop cleaner energy supplies. as we focus on transitioning our energy supply to more renewable solutions, we cannot simply abandon traditional methods, but rather must encourage innovation to attract and harness private capital to help accelerate deployment of future clean technologies. An all-of-the-above approach is the only way to ensure that Americans have access to affordable, reliable energy. Today, the witnesses will discuss their experiences in the clean energy economy and give us insight in what works best for ensuring that America has reliable and secure energy portfolio. It is clearly a privilege to welcome my fellow Pennsylvanian and Penn State alumnus, Dave Spiegelmeyer, as one of our witnesses, who will share a firsthand account of the important role of natural gas in central and western Pennsylvania. I look forward to learning from each and every one of you today and having a productive discussion on this very important issue. With that, Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. The gentleman yields back. And if subcommittee members have an opening statement prepared, we would ask that they be submitted for the record. I would again just like to take a minute to explain the timing rules here as we move forward. So each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and the members get 5 minutes for questioning. There's a lighting system right in front of you to assist you. The green light will be on when you begin, and then the yellow light comes on when you have 1 minute remaining. The red light comes on when you're out of time, and we ask that you stay within the time frame to the best of your ability. I would now like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Dr. Lynn Abramson. She is the president of the Clean Energy Business Network, the small business voice for the clean energy economy, representing over 3,000 businesses in all 50 states and across a diverse suite of technologies and services in energy efficiency, renewable energy, natural gas, and other advanced energy and transportation sectors. Dr. Abramson has earned a BA in biology from Boston University and a PhD in marine and atmospheric sciences from Stony Brook University, where her research on carbon cycle processes spurred her interest in advancing low-carbon energy solutions. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Abramson. Our next witness is Mr. Thomas Brooks, who is the general manager of Western Dubuque Biodiesel, or as I know you as Tom, a 30 million gallon production facility located in Farley, Iowa. Mr. Brooks is the son of a Kentucky row crop and livestock farmer. When starting his education, Mr. Brooks' first field of study was actually ministry. Mr. Brooks then later attended Texas A&M to study aerospace engineering. He is also an active member of the Corps of Cadets and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force in 1984 as an air weapons officer with a degree in sciences. Mr. Brooks has had more than 20 years of experience in his field, specifically refinement and value adding of animal fats and oil. He serves on the Iowa Biodiesel Board, the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association, and the National Biodiesel Board. He's a very busy guy. Mr. Brooks, thank you for your service, and thank you for coming from all the way from Iowa and spending 5 hours in the Chicago airport to join us. Our third witness today is Mr. Michael Williams, the Deputy Director of the Blue-Green Alliance, an organization that unites America's largest labor unions with influential environmental organizations to solve environmental challenges in ways that create and maintain quality jobs and build a stronger economy. Mr. Williams oversees the development of the organization's policy and legislative agenda, as well as the organization's revenue and fundraising efforts. He has an extensive background on issues related to climate change, clean energy, infrastructure, one of my favorites, and procurement policies, including overseeing the launch of BGA's landmark policy initiative, Buy Clean, a first-of-its-kind policy that was signed into law in California in 2017. Mr. Williams, thank you so much for being here. I now yield to Ranking Member Dr. Joyce to introduce our final witness today.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, again. Our fourth witness today is David Spiegelmeyer, president of the Pittsburg, Pennsylvania-based Marcellus Shale Coalition, or MSC, the region's largest shale development trade association. Mr. Spiegelmeyer was instrumental in founding of the MSC in 2008 and has served as the organization's chair, vice chair, and as lead as its legislative committee. The Marcellus Shale Coalition, with supply chain partners in the Appalachian Basin and across the country, address issues regarding the production of clean, job-creating American natural gas from the Marcellus and the Utica shale plays. One of its guiding principles is to implement state-of-the-art environmental protection across all of its operations. I am grateful to have Mr. Spiegelmeyer here with us today to highlight the benefits and economic opportunities that clean natural gas provides. Mr. Spiegelmeyer is a native of Clearfield County, Dubuque, and a Penn State alum, as in we are. He now lives in the southwestern Pennsylvania area with his wife and 2 children. I thank him as well for traveling to be with us today, and I am looking forward to hearing his expert insights about clean natural gas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. The gentleman yields back. And Dr. Abramson, you are recognized now for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Finkenauer, Ranking Member Joyce, and members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today on the topic of growing the clean energy economy. My name is Lynn Abramson, and I'm president of the Clean Energy Business Network, which serves as the small business voice for the clean energy economy. Our network of more than 3,000 small and mid-sized business leaders across the country spans all 50 states, including at least 31 professionals in the congressional districts that are represented by members of this subcommittee. My remarks today will focus on growth, the growth of the clean energy economy as a whole, the growth opportunity that small businesses present, and a vision for how policymakers can help business leaders deliver on that growth potential. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, and natural gas represent the growth sectors of the U.S. energy economy, according to data from the 2019 Sustainable Energy in America Factbook. These clean energy sectors now employ 3.4 million American workers and supply more than half our nation's electricity. And this growing industry is not only powered by tech giants in Silicon Valley, but also by the neighbors we run into at the grocery store and PTA meetings. People like BioJoe and Beth Renwick, the founders of Green Energy Biofuel in South Carolina. More than a decade ago, the couple tried making biodiesel in their garage to save money on gas. They've since turned their experiment into a successful business with 2 production centers, regional distribution, and several dozen local jobs that can't be outsourced. In 2017, CEBN surveyed our members on their business needs and priorities. We asked what were the most significant challenges facing their businesses, and policy topped the list of responses, particularly the need for more stable, predictable policies. It is very difficult for Fortune 500 companies, let alone small businesses, to build long-term infrastructure when the ground is constantly shifting beneath their feet. My written testimony outlines detailed policy recommendations, relevant business case studies, and provides links to letters from hundreds of small businesses. But in brief, here are some of the most important ways Congress can accelerate the growth of the clean energy economy and the small business opportunities within it. First, reinstate and extend expired clean energy tax incentives and clarify that energy storage and waste heat to power qualify for the Section 48 investment tax credit. Second, provide robust funding in FY 2020 for the Department of Energy overall and key research, development, and commercialization programs within the agency. I'll note that the congressional districts represented by members of this subcommittee have attracted more than $1 billion in DOE grants over the past 5 years. Third, across all federal programs relating to infrastructure, such as the Farm Bill, disaster recovery legislation, transportation bills, promote the adoption of clean, readily available technologies that will improve energy reliability, security, and flexibility. And finally, establish stable, predictable energy policy goals that encourage market-based approaches and allow businesses to innovate and compete to offer the most effective, affordable solutions. There is nothing more fundamentally American than a small business owner setting out to build a company. We are a nation that believes that any challenge can be overcome with sufficient ingenuity and grit, and that anyone can rise to success with a good idea and enough dedication. But the right opportunities need to exist. We need lawmakers to stand beside our nation's small businesses and provide the opportunity to compete and grow in the U.S. clean energy economy. Thank you again for offering me the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to addressing your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Abramson. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Brooks for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairwoman Finkenauer, Ranking Member Joyce, and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. Thank you for considering biodiesel industry as an important component of the clean energy economy. Small biodiesel producers are here today delivering clean energy and economic development. Biodiesel producers can be a giant driver of economic opportunity in rural communities. All we need to continue delivering these benefits now and for the future is stable policy. My name is Tom Brooks. I'm the General Manager of Western Dubuque Biodiesel, a small business in Farley, Iowa. Western Dubuque was formed by a group of eastern Iowa farmers and local business people. In June of 2006, we raised capital from 557 investors, all whom live within 45 miles of the facility. The investment was a significant investment opportunity for a town of 1,500 people. Today, Western Dubuque employs 24 workers at the plant, plus 28 contract drivers, for a combined payroll of $3.7 million. We purchase feedstocks, soybean oil, and catalyst from local suppliers, again adding value to the state's economy. The employment and economic opportunities are only part of how we support the local community. Western Dubuque pays more than $200,000 in taxes to the city of Farley each year. Additionally, we paid for the city's new water tower fund and the local Western Dubuque school expansion. I feel it's fair to say that the town would not be able to afford the new water tower and the school expansion were it not for our company and its contributions. Our small business is a large economic presence in our small community. Moreover, we are delivering clean energy right now, today. Strong, consistent federal policy is needed to ensure continued success. Congress created the Renewable Fuel Standard and the Biodiesel Tax Incentive with the intent to reduce the transportation sector's carbon emissions and build a rural economy. Without question, the policies are succeeding. When the incentives were first implemented in 2005, the U.S. produced nearly 112 million gallons of biodiesel. Now that market has climbed to 2.9 billion gallons in 2017. Nationwide, the biodiesel industry supports more than 65,000 jobs, $11 billion in economic impact. In many rural areas of the country, biodiesel plants are the driving force of that local economy, supporting employment for plant operators, truck drivers, and sources for farmers. Grain farmers receive better value for their soybeans thanks to biodiesel. U.S. biodiesel production uses the surplus oil from soybean crushing, adding 63 cents to the value of every bushel of beans grown by the farmer. By boosting the value of surplus soybean oil, biodiesel lowers the price of soybean meal for poultry and livestock producers, thereby reducing our cost when we purchase meats. Informa Economics estimates livestock producers pay $21 less per ton for soybean meal due to the increased biodiesel production and its use. Stable, forward-looking tax policy combined with market signals from the RFS can help the biodiesel industry continue to stimulate economic growth, but right now policies are not stable. At the beginning of this year, biodiesel producers were being forced to put projects on hold, reduce investments due to uncertainty about the renewal of the tax incentive and the growing number of small refinery exemptions being handed out by the EPA. Now, 9 months later into the year, we've seen a half a dozen plants announce shutdowns with more than 200 million gallons of capacity impacted. It's ironic that the EPA has such concern for the economic hardships facing small refineries. The exemptions the agency is granting to each refiner that asks are simply shifting the hardship to even smaller bioproducers, small businesses like mine. I want to again thank Chairwoman Finkenauer for taking action to investigate EPA's refinery exemptions, which are a severe threat to the clean energy economy and to rural communities. The economic misfortune for biodiesel producers flows through local rural economies. It impacts feedstock purchases, farm equipment purchases, and then savings and investments to the rural community. While a long-term extension would provide necessary policy certainty, our industry urgently needs immediate extension of the biodiesel tax incentive for 2018 and 2019, at least, to help end the current climate of uncertainty that clouds our industry. I want to thank once again Chairwoman Finkenauer for her leadership in fighting to renew that credit. I would like to emphasize that there are successful policies in place to support clean energy and jobs at home, primarily through small businesses like mine. That progress, however, is in jeopardy without quick reinstatement of the biodiesel tax incentive and stable RFS policy over the long term. Thank you for the opportunity to submit my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate it. And I'd now like to recognize Mr. Williams for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Finkenauer, Ranking Member Dr. Joyce, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Mike Williams. I'm with the Blue-Green Alliance. Thank you for convening this hearing today regarding the opportunities that the clean energy economy can provide. Small businesses are critical to our economy, and a major expansion of clean energy is vital if we're going to succeed in the fight against climate change. It's time we brought this thinking together, and in doing so, we must strive to do it right and lift up American workers. Chairwoman, as you noted, the Blue-Green Alliance unites America's largest and most influential labor unions and environmental organizations to solve today's environmental challenges in ways that create and maintain quality jobs and build a stronger, fairer economy. Our partnership is firm in its belief that Americans don't have to choose between a good job and a clean environment. We can and we must have both. Many solutions are already being put into place across the country. Tradespeople built the Block Island offshore wind project off the coast of Rhode Island. Auto workers are on the factory floors building cleaner cars and trucks in Michigan. Previously unemployed workers in St. Louis and Los Angeles are gaining access to high-skilled jobs in energy efficiency retrofitting, pipe fitting, and transit manufacturing, while companies across the country are manufacturing methane mitigation technologies. These are all good jobs building a clean energy and climate-resilient economy today. And many of these industries provide key opportunities for small businesses. Let's take 2 examples. First, the methane mitigation industry. Methane is an incredibly potent gas that is the second largest contributor to climate change. Reducing methane emissions can reap economic benefits for workers, businesses, and communities across the country. Our research has found that the adoption of technologies and practices to reduce methane at new and modified oil and gas facilities would create over 50,000 jobs over the first decade of full implementation. Many of these jobs would be in the methane leak detection and repair industry. Research has found over 130 companies with customers in almost every state in this growing field. More than 1/3 of these businesses were founded within the last 6 years, and the majority of them are small businesses. And these are good jobs. The median hourly wage for the industry is $30.88, compared to $19.60 for all U.S. jobs. Second, companies across the country are manufacturing and providing services to improve the energy efficiency of our nation's housing and building stock and industrial facilities. Energy efficiency improvements support existing jobs, increase the quality of jobs created, and reduce pollution. Local communities can also capture the benefits of energy efficiency retrofits, including lower utility bills, improved tenant health, and increased economic development. Small businesses are not only creating the jobs to do this work, but can also reap these same cost and environmental health benefits if they make energy efficiency updates themselves. There are currently over 2.3 million jobs in the energy efficiency sector, and roughly 70% of these are in small businesses. Furthermore, identifying the supply chain and moving policies to increase domestic manufacturing of energy efficiency retrofit products can also help to create quality manufacturing jobs. Our research has found roughly 4,500 local manufacturing facilities in nearly every state across the country doing just this. In New York, for example, Flower City Habitat for Humanity builds affordable housing for communities in Rochester. Through a commitment to in-state sourcing with 95% of parts coming from New York manufacturers, Flower City Habitat will be using windows and doors that exceed Energy Star standards at an affordable price. Many of these New York-based suppliers are IUE CWA represented, supporting quality jobs and local businesses in these communities while reducing emissions. These kinds of opportunities are exactly what we should be prioritizing to revitalize American manufacturing, protect the environment, and create quality jobs across the country. Through an aggressive agenda to regain American leadership in clean technology innovation and manufacturing, and an ambitious plan to rebuild and transform America's infrastructure, we will rebuild American competitiveness in the global economy and secure and create a new generation of good middle-class jobs across America. At the same time, while many clean economy jobs are good union jobs, too many are still not. Too many companies are offshoring jobs, offering substandard wages, conditions, and benefits, or failing to provide a safe, healthy workplace. Progress has been made, but it's being put at risk. We need a commitment to high-quality job creation across all sectors of the economy, but especially related to clean energy, adaptation, and resilience. That means a commitment to increasing union density, labor standards, and prevailing wage, health and safety protections, training, and project labor and community benefit agreements. In closing, I want to reiterate that tackling the crisis of climate change, if done right, is a significant opportunity to ensure a more equitable society, increase U.S. global competitiveness, support and grow small businesses, and create quality, family-sustaining jobs across the country. We look forward to working with you, Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and the whole committee as you move forward your agenda for the 116th Congress. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Spiegel Meyer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Chairwoman Finkenauer, Ranking Member Joyce, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Dave Spiegelmeyer. I'm the president of the Pittsburgh-based Marcellus Shale Coalition. We represented energy-producing, transmission, midstream supply companies, as well as more than 150 supply chain businesses supporting shale development across the Appalachian Basin. This is a critical and timely conversation about supporting our nation's pursuit of a thriving clean energy economy, one that prioritizes innovation, job growth, and a sustainable energy future. Our country's energy landscape has changed dramatically over the last decade. Innovation and technology has enabled access to deep shale formations in the Appalachian Basin, as well as across our country, which has triggered tremendous job growth. The natural gas we are producing in Pennsylvania has driven unprecedented environmental gains that are enhancing air quality and making clean energy affordable once again for consumers of natural gas. Furthermore, natural gas is the vital fuel necessary and essential to back up interruptible sources of renewable energy to contribute to our electric grid. As a result of shale development, our nation is far more energy secure. In many ways, our economic and environmental progress is in large part owed to it. In Pennsylvania alone, where 20% of America's natural gas is now produced, our industry supports over 300,000 direct and indirect jobs and contributes $45 billion to our state's economy, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers. From Pennsylvania's labor community, with union halls at full employment, to new building tradesmen and women being trained, jobs are being generated to mobilize our nation's energy infrastructure. Our building trades are constructing new power generation facilities, pipelines, and a world-class petrochemical complex just west of Pittsburgh. This facility alone is a $6 billion investment. It's one of the largest construction sites in America with more than 147 cranes active, employs 6,000 building tradesmen and women to build this world-class facility. There are also countless small businesses owners who entrepreneurial spirit has seized the opportunities presented by this industry. Our state's agricultural sector proceeds from natural gas development has indeed saved family farms. Pennsylvania consumers have witnessed historic reductions in natural gas commodity prices, especially those on fixed incomes. Natural gas commodity prices for end-use consumers are down 56 to 76%, depending on which utility serves your natural gas since 2008. And wholesale electric prices in the PJM ISO are down 41% since 2008, saving the average household between $1,200 and $2,500 annually, according to our Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. Pennsylvania's economic strides have been met with equally impressive air quality achievements. Thanks to innovations in technology, tightened environmental performance standards, and increased use of natural gas, we have reduced volatile organic compound emissions, which are down 51%, sulfur dioxide emissions down 82%, nitrogen oxide emissions down 72%, and additionally, Pennsylvania's carbon dioxide emissions from electric power generation, where natural gas is playing a bigger and bigger role, are down 30% since 2005. Nationally, according to the U.S. EPA, In 2017, total greenhouse gas emissions across the U.S. reached their lowest levels in 25 years, propelling the U.S. to be a world leader in CO2 emission reductions. This is not despite the shale revolution, it's because of it. As I stated earlier, natural gas is the most reliable and affordable partner for our growing clean energy economy. When intermittent renewable sources are unavailable, dependable baseload power is essential. Natural gas generators can scale up rapidly to meet demand, making natural gas a vital partner with renewable energy. Natural gas is also vital to our everyday lives as a manufacturing fuel. All steel, glass, plastic, chemicals, fertilizers, powdered metals, pharmaceutical medications, and indeed, 1/3 of our power generation today are produced from natural gas. Without a doubt, any conversation about clean energy must be grounded in the partnership that will make that possible. Supporting a thriving natural gas industry from production to pipeline deployment to its growth in power generation should be a core focus of any public policy discussion aimed at building upon the progress our industry has realized for Pennsylvania and the nation. As you continue to explore how Congress can best support the growth of our nation's clean energy economy, I appreciate the recognition of this subcommittee that natural gas is important and a vital component of that discussion. On behalf of our members and the thousands of men and women who work in our nation's natural gas industry, thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelmeyer. And now we're going to begin questions from the members up here. And with that, I will recognize myself for 5 minutes. And Mr. Brooks, since you, again, spent those 5 hours in Chicago in that airport, I feel like I should start with you. Thank you again for being here today. As you know, the biodiesel tax credit has been key to growing your industry and our state. I know that our gas stations and truck stops, and therefore consumers and truck drivers, also benefit from this tax credit to keep actually gas prices low. Can you explain how the credit works to the committee? And then how does your company use the credit? And why is its lapse so damaging that it's forcing some plants to shut down?
Thank you, Congresswoman Finkenauer, for the question. First, the Biodiesel Tax Incentive is a $1 per gallon credit available to the taxpayer who blends the biodiesel or renewable diesel into the petroleum diesel fuel, who either use or sell the mixture or trade it with their business. The net effect is that each gallon of biodiesel and renewable diesel used in the United States offers $1 of revenue value throughout the value and supply chain. Secondly, the flexibility of the incentive, which is extended prospectively, spurs both investments in production when the producer claims a portion of the credit and in the blending infrastructure when the discretionary blender uses a portion of the credit. Unfortunately, the biodiesel tax incentive lapses. The market relies on Congress's history to retroactively reinstate that credit. So someone must bear the burden of taking the risk. The downside of the market reliance is that at least one party, the producer or the discretionary blender, eventually has to be held on accounts receivable. Finally, as discretionary blenders become less and less willing to take the pricing risk associated with the uncertainty of the extending tax incentive, biodiesel and renewable diesel producers are forced to bear the risk, the full risk, and are exposed to the $1 per gallon price risk on every gallon produced.
Thank you so much. And could you also elaborate just a little bit further, too, on how the uncertainty surrounding the renewable fuel standard and the biodiesel tax credit is impacting our farmers and our rural communities just a little more broadly?
Yes,
and what you're
ma'am.
hearing on the ground. Yeah.
Okay. The uncertainty of the RFS because of not growing the volumes in the last 5 years has created havoc to the Midwest farmer, as seen by the prices that they're bringing at harvest time. They're in the red as compared to the first 5 years of the RFS. You've got trade wars, the uncertainty, then you throw the SREs into the mix. It creates a problem for the markets in RINs generation, which affects fuel prices. Then the producer can't sell at a stable price, creating further instability in the market. And farmers that are investors in the plant suffer because of the grain price, they suffer because of the uncertainty of the market, and they're suffering because of the investments that they made in renewable energy.
Thank you. And actually, something that I learned when I was visiting you guys at the plant not that long ago had to do with something that we're watching very closely with the Department of Commerce. Right now, I understand that they are considering reducing countervailing duty rates on biodiesel from Argentina. As you know, Argentina's policies were undercutting American biodiesel producers, and the current countervailing and anti-dumping duty orders were meant to level the playing field. In the short time that they've been in place, I understand that the rates have been successful in keeping out these unfairly priced imports. Can you tell us if the Department of Commerce moves forward with reducing these rates, what impact will that have on Western Dubuque biodiesel and other small businesses like yours?
Good question, Chairwoman. When the countervailing duties were not in place, we saw production decrease to 60% of capacity throughout the Midwest and the United States. So the differential tax credit that Argentina had allowed the feedstocks, i.e. biodiesel, to come into the United States cheaper than the farmer could even grow the bean and have the oil crushed from. And as a result, discretionary blenders were taking advantage of the market, driving prices down with cheaper imports coming into the country.
So it would be fair to say that that you would agree that the administration and the Department of Commerce and Secretary Ross should not be allowing these countervailing measures and to go away, and if they did, it would be detrimental.
Yes, ma'am, and I've told him as much personally.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Brooks. And with that, my time is about to expire, so I would like to recognize Dr. Joyce for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Finkenauer. Mr. Spiegelmeyer, you piqued my interest with some information that you discussed with the expanding shale industry in Pennsylvania. You talked about the positive impact on agriculture. Now realize this subcommittee is also addresses agricultural issues and entrepreneurship. Would you please explain more what you were talking about in that?
Yeah, when leases are taken, bonus payments are paid. In Pennsylvania, it's exceeded $5 billion to mineral owners and landowners across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and my comment was it is indeed saved family farms, and that's my experience. As well, royalties are paid. On average, 15% of the production royalties go back to the mineral owner, and that too has provided valuable income back to consumer or back to mineral owners in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
During my time in the district work period in August, I had the opportunity to visit the new petrochemical plant that Shell is building in western Pennsylvania. Can you talk about the economic impact of that on community and actually on the nation at large?
Sure. It's the first of its kind petrochemical complex that's being built just to the west of Pittsburgh. About 70% of plastics manufacturers are located within 700 miles of Pittsburgh, yet they've had to transport the raw materials for plastics manufacturing to that region via truck. The savings on a cost of goods sold is about 1.3% right out of the gate, but the jobs being generated at that site, the downstream jobs that will likely flow from that are extraordinary. That plant's expected to be complete in 2022. And I would share that it's not just the investments at a $6 billion facility like that. We've written the obituary for manufacturing in the Appalachian Basin for the last 4 decades, and today we're writing birth announcements up and down the Ohio River. We've got not only the $6 billion that's been invested at that facility, we've got $1 billion now being invested by U.S. Steel. We've got the savings of the Marcus Hook Industrial Complex just outside the Philadelphia airport. We've got $13 billion of new power generation facilities. Again, we produce about 250% of the power that we use in Pennsylvania, and it's saved consumers up and down the PJM ISO, 41% on their wholesale energy costs. And I think I'd also share that from a small business standpoint, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we've witnessed small businesses that started in 2008 with a person or two. I'll use one for example, Steel Nation. It's a a building manufacturer south of Pittsburgh. They had one employee, had less than $1 million of gross proceeds annually. They now have 30 employees at that location, and their proceeds are $40 million annually. Those small business type of stories are being told over and over and over again all through Pennsylvania, and I'm sure, Congressman, you have a chance to talk to a lot of those folks every day.
We're going to ask that you just bring the mic closer so that we can hear your important answers.
Issue with my mic here, but that's fine. Thank you.
You've mentioned the use of natural gas in power generation, and importantly, its partnership with the renewables. What specifically have you observed in Pennsylvania? This is so important as we reach and embrace the all-of-the-above approach to be able to have the strong interaction with the reusable renewables and with the natural gas industry.
Yes, in 2004, Pennsylvania passed an alternative energy portfolio standard requiring 18% of their power be generated by Tier 1 and Tier 2 sources. Those are renewable sources of energy as well as new technologies. We're on our path there today, but I would share that in Pennsylvania, our wind doesn't always blow and our sun doesn't always shine, and consumers across Pennsylvania require that when they turn the switch on, their power comes on. There's no better partner for renewable energy than natural gas. Natural gas comes on quickly, it comes on affordably, and is reliable in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for emphasizing the partnerships that we need to be able to achieve, the benefits to the agricultural industry, which natural gas has occurred and developed in Pennsylvania. As a physician, understanding the decreased emissions, and we quoted very similar, I think identical numbers on the decreased emissions. That's important to my constituents. It's important to all of Pennsylvania. I thank you all for being here. Mr. Brooks, I would be amiss if I didn't thank you for your military service as well. I yield back my time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. And with that, I'd like to recognize Representative Angie Craig for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to all of you for being here. And Mr. Brooks, I wanted to start with you. As a member of the Ag Committee, it's an honor to fight for family farmers in Minnesota. I want to direct my question and also just applaud the chairwoman for her work on biodiesel and specifically her bill to provide the 2-year extension of the biodiesel tax credit, of which I also am an original co-sponsor. As you mentioned, Congress had previously extended the tax credit retroactively for 2017, but it expired in 2018. You noted in your testimony that the biodiesel's blender's tax incentive has helped achieve the desired goal of expanding domestic production of clean energy resources and jobs here at home. I know Chairwoman Finkenauer and I have frequently pushed for quick action, but I'm curious to hear what you think stands in the way at this point of getting this tax credit extended or reauthorized, and how does that lack of certainty impact small businesses?
Excellent question. Thank you for being a co-sponsor on the bill. I can't answer why it hasn't happened specifically, but I can tell you what the impact is for it not being extended. We've seen years where the credit has lapsed 7 of the last 11 years, which has the effect of coming in December or January and February, which brings no value to the producer or the blender, missing gallons, and it creates an uncertain market for the person buying downstream because they don't know if the credit is coming. Should they buy the gallon or not buy the gallon? So I sell to discretionary blenders who take on a portion of that credit just like I do. So we have an accounts receivable that's out for 21 months. It's hard to run a business when you have a receivables out 21 months, even for a discretionary blender and other small businesses like ours. So getting it restated would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, I wanted to ask you, thank you for what you do at the Blue-Green Alliance as well. How do we prepare the current and future workforce? I spent about 4 years as the head of HR for a major organization in Minnesota, but how do we prepare American workers to be part of this growing clean energy economy?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question and for your work. We're founded in Minnesota, so we appreciate your service there as well. A public investment in training and preparedness plan development, economic development, but especially that point on training is incredibly important to this. And it's incredibly important that when the federal government invests in training and workforce development, it does so in partnership with local communities, with unions, with registered apprenticeship programs, with community colleges, and especially leaning on working with unions and specifically registered apprenticeship programs in the construction and building trades industries, because there's a significant amount of expertise there. And we want to be able to lift up the expertise and the work that's already happening. So there's a number of pieces of legislation that have done this, but that would be what I would recommend.
Thank you. And then finally, I just wanted to say, Dr. Abramson, thank you for presenting the DOE grants. It was incredibly enlightening, and I got to figure out what we're doing in the 2nd Congressional District and help us get more of those grants. So thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Craig. And with that, I will recognize Representative Jim Hagedorn for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank the witnesses. As a representative from a rural district in Minnesota and someone who serves on the Ag Committee, I'm part of the Biofuels Caucus. We certainly support biodiesel, ethanol, those things. Like to see the tax credits extended again, reinstated, and also make sure that we do get the small refinery and other issues cleared up. I spoke with some people at agriculture, including the secretary himself over the break, and they said they're working on that, and I think maybe we'll see some progress here in the near future. So hopefully that'll go well. We support the industry. Thank you, Mr. Brooks, for being here. Small business does depend on energy, all of the above. And back talking on the break, manufacturers, it doesn't matter. Trucking companies, everybody, they need abundant, reliable, low-cost energy. And sometimes I think we get a little conflicted where we feel, and maybe there's folks think that the world's coming to an end and we have to make all these big changes, Green New Deal and all that, and that I guess could drive making changes at any cost. But I don't believe in that. I think we need to be efficient, and we need to do things that are going to be right for our economy and right for our consumers and everyone else. So all of the above makes sense to me in keeping downward pressure on the cost of energy, because when the price of energy is inflated needlessly, the price of every cost and service in our economy goes up, takes money out of people's back pockets, makes us less competitive around the world. It's not a good thing. And we also need not just all of the above, but the energy infrastructure. And I was happy to hear about pipelines, refineries, distribution points. And, there's talk about labor and how these things can all connect. But the labor folks that I talk to are a little disappointed because a lot of pipeline projects out there, a lot of refinery projects, and the folks that are quote-unquote for clean energy are the ones blocking those. We have a pipeline in northern Minnesota, Enbridge 3. It's a replacement for crude oil. And, the clean energy folks say we shouldn't do it because we should get off of fossil fuels. But there's no path at this point to eliminate fossil fuels from our economy. And matter of fact, there's no technology that can get us there for even electricity production. We don't have the battery storage technology in an efficient way or even practical way to make that happen. So until that, it would be irresponsible, I think, for us to try to run our traditional energy companies out of business while we're promoting the so-called, again, clean energy. Nothing's clean. There's issues with every source of energy. But I was very impressed, Mr. Spiegelmeyer, with your testimony about what's going on in natural gas and the way that great American technology is being used to first locate that gas and go get it, and then driving down emissions, driving down costs, providing the base load power that's necessary in order to make sure that our small businesses and consumers and everybody can rely on that. One of the things, again, I see in conflict is that some of the folks that would like us to move from, let's say, coal-fired power plants to natural gas, think that's a good move, but then they don't support fracking. What's your opinion of that? I mean, right now, don't we have about a 300-plus year reserve of gas that we predict, and we're exporting it and all these other things?
It's a great reflection, Congressman. I would share that we've gone from a period of high price and lack of supply to a period of abundance and affordability, all driven by technology. Some would think it's because of hydraulic fracturing. We've actually been hydraulically fracturing natural gas wells in America since the early 1940s. Hydraulic fracturing certainly plays a role in releasing not only natural gas but liquid hydrocarbons to the surface. But the technology changes in production today are the ability to turn a drill bit horizontally to produce far more than anyone ever thought possible through unconventional horizontal development. And as you mentioned, reserves in the neighborhood of 300+ years are certainly possible through this technology. I would share with you that we put this coalition that I represent 10 years ago. None of us thought that Pennsylvania could go from 180 BCF of production, or billion cubic feet of production, to over 6 trillion cubic feet of production in 10 years. We're now the #2 producer of natural gas in America as a result of that technology improvement.
I'd also add that in a lot of, I'm not at all opposed to wind and solar. I support it. I think we should just be practical about it, and it's an intermittent source, and it can contribute, but it's not the panacea at this point because of technology. But if we want a lot of wind and solar, we also need a lot of copper and other types of materials, and we have to get that through mining. And we also want to do that in Minnesota, and some of the folks, again, that say they're for clean energy don't want the mining. So maybe there's some conflict to be worked out on both sides. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Hagedorn. And with that, I will recognize Representative Jarrett Golden, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure. Again, one of my favorites, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Williams, I just wanted to point out something that, and I follow your organization closely, and I appreciate the work that you do and the effort that you're making. Wanted to point out some things going on in Maine for your alliance to look into. One is we have some loggers who have joined the Machinists Union of late, and when talking about the renewable fuel standard in woody biomass, we have a problem in Maine and I think most of the Northeast and parts of the Southeast as well, which is that it currently only allows for woody biomass that comes from planted trees and tree residue from actively managed tree plantations. Of course, about 57% of our forests in the United States are owned by private citizens, families, private cooperatives, industries, and others. And the majority of these rely on natural regeneration for stand establishment and not artificial regeneration like we see in plantation forests. So it feels like we're leaving a lot of potential biomass in the woods, so to speak. And I think that we've been pushing as a Maine delegation to get the EPA to treat this a little bit differently and get that woody biomass that's naturally regenerative into the market, and assisted through the renewable fuel standard. And I would also point out for your organization's interest that this isn't just about the loggers, but the biomass facilities themselves, some of which are going out of business as investors look elsewhere where there are other energies that are reliable, can be supported through the renewable fuel standard and other tax incentives and others that just aren't being prioritized for biomass. In addition, we got the sawmills and a lot of other forest products manufacturers, many of whom are union, to include like steel workers, boiler makers, machinists, electricians, and others. But I just think there's some space for you to get involved and step in and be supportive of some of these changes. So I wanted to share that with you. And I'm also excited about growth of solar in the state of Maine. But there's a lot of talk about the need for some apprenticeship programs and others as we see that growing workforce coming into our state. There's a workforce shortage and a need for apprenticeship opportunities and others. So don't forget about Maine is all I would say about that. Dr. Abramson, I wanted to ask you just about your membership in general. Do you have a lot of members that directly use biomass or provide equipment or services to clients who generate with biomass? And also, we have a great bill. Senator Angus King sponsors the Biomass Thermal Utilization Act, which would add tax incentives for the installation of energy-efficient wood boilers, stoves, and heaters, residential and commercial. So maybe you'd be supportive of that as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And just to note on that last point, I mean, we are supportive of across the board incentivizing energy technologies. The incumbent energy industries have historically enjoyed tax credits, and that's been incredibly valuable in promoting economic development and the growth of new industries in this country. And the renewable energy and energy efficiency, biodiesel industries, and as you noted, the thermal energy industries certainly should benefit as well from long-term stable tax policies that can incentivize these technologies. To your earlier question regarding our membership, it's quite diverse. We have renewable energy, energy efficiency, natural gas, combined heat and power, waste heat to power, biomass, biodiesel, storage, grid technologies, carbon capture. I mean, it's quite
bit of everything.
extensive, and it just speaks to the breadth of the clean energy economy. I would say in Maine, actually, one exciting member that I have actually noted in my written testimony is
read that.
Kay Aiken from Introspective Systems, who was just in town a little bit ago in March to talk about how the Department of Energy has helped her commercialize her advanced microgrid technology and software solutions, which she's now bringing to bear in solutions such as providing reliable power to the Isle of Haut in Maine, which is currently under jeopardy because they have this 7-mile pipeline or cable, rather, undersea cable that's at risk of failure, and she's replacing that with a solar and storage microgrid solution. So
I'm
it's a
glad you
terrific
shared
case
that
study.
in your testimony. We have a lot of island communities, and talking about battery storage, solar, wind, and others, with the more traditional sources of energy is, I think, important for the future of those communities. So, and obviously, that's not special just to the Maine coast. So, thank you.
Thank you.
For sharing that. Lastly, Mr. Williams, I just wanted to share wind energy potential in Maine, and I think a lot of you know this too, is huge. In fact, the Gulf of Maine is, I think, unique in its ability to produce wind power offshore. However, you've got some experience trying to pull together alliances that sometimes people may traditionally think are at odds. So, I'd love to hear your feedback at some point about how we can tap into that, energy source for the state of Maine. I think about 3% of the shoreline, if we were to utilize that for wind, could power almost the entire state. Of course, we'd have to talk about how to get that energy into the grid, but beyond that, I think a lot of lobstermen, also machinists in Maine, rightfully concerned about how that offshore wind could impact their fisheries. And we got some work to do to build a coalition that can work together. And maybe the Blue Green Alliance has some experience with this type of work and could help.
Yeah, really quick. So I live in Maine, actually, and I've been doing, not in your district, sadly, though, but been working closely with the IBW on solar, the Maine AFL-CIO. The question on woody biomass is great earlier, and would love to talk further. That those conversations need to be updated. They're based on previously held notions. We need to dig into that further. On offshore wind, just want to flag, I've been working with the iron workers in Maine. There's going to be a conference held on October 16th in Portland, so we'd love for you to come or send a staff. Would love to help dig into that further.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Representative Golden. And now I'd like to recognize Representative Burchett for 5 minutes.
Birch like the tree and like I just ate breakfast, Chair Lady. And I thank you for letting me poach your committee. I'm not a member of this committee, and I'm honored that you'd let me be here for a short moment. And thank you, Ranking Member Joyce, as well. Thank you. While I'm not a member of this subcommittee, I appreciate y'all allowing me to be here to discuss this important topic. I think there's plenty of opportunities in the clean energy economy for innovation, job growth, and growing small businesses across the country. And I know that there's going to be plenty of different approaches to doing all of this, and I'm hopeful whatever we do, we can keep our free market principles in mind when we look at different approaches. For example, I recently introduced the Carbon Capture Improvement Act. See how I worked that in there? I just worked that in there that had a bill that dealt with this. This is a bill that would provide industrial facilities and power plants a financial incentive to invest in carbon capture and storage equipment. The goal here would be to invest in companies that are working to grow clean energy. I think we ought to incentivize businesses to lower carbon emissions rather than force it on them through more regulations that seem to just employ bureaucrats and not really accomplish what we attempted to do. And I'd suggest that I would like for y'all to take a look at them and see if you're interested in helping support this initiative. Aside from that, I'd like to know what you all see as the most important step we should be taking to ensure this sector is getting the support needed to continue to grow this economy. And I'll stop there. And ma'am, you're nodding your head, so why don't you just jump in?
Well, I'd be happy to jump in. I think two areas that I noted in my testimony that are particularly critical. One includes appropriations. This is an area where there are some promising technologies. We do need to continue to invest in developing those technologies and bringing down costs. And we have some members not so much working in the larger carbon sequestration projects, although there are some very exciting ones out there, such as Net Power, which is developing a zero-emitting natural gas facility in Texas, which is very exciting. And then we have others that are investing in carbon capture utilization, so developing bioproducts or other materials out of carbon and sequestering it through that mechanism. So I do think continued funding, because one of the things we hear is that venture capitalists are not going to necessarily help fund unproven technologies. They want to see that the technology has already been demonstrated, and that's where the government comes in, where we can invest in promising technologies that could have both economic and environmental benefits and help them bring those technologies to commercialization, so the private sector, we can leverage those private sector dollars to continue that work. So I would say appropriations is critical. And then whether we're talking about regulation or legislation, such as tax incentives, having, I think to the extent possible that we can incentivize across the board and allow technologies to compete, that's extremely helpful.
Anyone else?
I'll just jump in that carbon capture and storage is certainly a huge opportunity for enhancing recovery of liquid hydrocarbons. I know the Department of Energy is spending a fair amount of money through their NETL programs across the country. I did have a chance recently to talk to Deputy Secretary Winberg at Department of Energy, and I know they're spending a fair amount of money to take a look at how carbon capture and storage can enhance recovery of not only natural gas, but natural gas liquids as well. Just one add-on I would have, there was a comment made about methane. To give you a perspective, in 2008, natural gas pricing at the wellhead was $13.71. Just this past week, bid week pricing for September was $1.61. Operators in my space have every incentive to capture every single molecule of natural gas that they can capture because it's the product that they sell. They have an incentive to make sure they have technologies in place to make sure we're not allowing methane to escape into the atmosphere, and we're doing just that.
Do we have any facts or figures on how much methane is being produced, I guess you'd say, anaerobically through our landfills?
It's a great piece that fits into the renewable portfolio standards of almost every single state in the country where, landfill gas is adding to power generation and new technology for business growth as well. I don't have a figure on how much that is, but it's significant, sir.
Chair Lady, I'll yield back the remainder of my 4 seconds. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Burchett. And thank you all so much for taking the time today. It truly does mean a lot that you all traveled all this way and to have your voices heard and to have us be able to ask you these questions that we think are very important for Congress to hear and learn from. I just have to tell you, as we start to look at tackling the unprecedented challenges that come with climate change and unpredictable weather, you guys know this. It is more important than ever before to continue to support our clean energy economy. But it's also more important than ever, too, to be here and listening to each other, and also making sure that we are tackling this in a way that we are listening to different districts throughout the country and bringing folks together about what works in their district, what they have been doing that has been working well, how do we do more of what works well, and how do we create the innovation necessary to tackle the changes that are needed to be made to, again, address climate change and make sure that, again, we are bringing folks together as we do it. I think it's incredibly important. And I'm just really grateful to all the members of the committee here today where we can have those conversations and the folks that wanted to, again, testify. And there's a lot going on in all of our districts. I know I've got my friend in biodiesel here, but, there's great work being done in wind and in solar and actually in methane capture, too, from our farmers as well. That's actually one of the first bills bills that I helped pass through the State House over 5 years ago. And these are the types of things that have been happening. We need to continue to support that innovation. And I'm just, again, very, very grateful. And also, on top of all of it, as we've heard here today, small businesses are at the forefront of the clean energy economy and some of this innovation, promoting new technologies in both renewable energy and energy efficiency. From the field to the factory floor, small businesses are playing a very key role. Our conversations today also underscored the fact that the clean energy economy supports millions of high-skilled workers and jobs, with the production of certain energies like wind and biofuels largely concentrated in rural areas. These industries can be a boon to small communities around them. Considering that job growth in rural areas continue to lag behind the rest of the country, clean energy is a real opportunity to stimulate economic growth in our rural communities. Federal and state investment and incentives for clean energy and energy efficiency have played a significant role in growing these industries and, in turn, supporting our small businesses. The testimonies that we heard today demonstrate why these incentives, like the biodiesel tax credit, must be consistent. Business owners need certainty. Mr. Brooks should not be guessing from year to year whether he can use this important credit. Our conversations today underscored the need for the biodiesel tax credit immediate extension, and I will continue to call for its passage in the House and in the Senate. The clean energy economy has an outside impact on Iowa's rural communities and our small towns, as we've discussed here today. And, you know, these growing industries will undoubtedly continue to be an important part of our country's economy for decades to come. This hearing is just one of the many steps that this committee is taking to look at how our small businesses and our entrepreneurs across the country, especially, again, those in rural areas, this is Rural Development, Ag Trade, and Entrepreneurship Subcommittee, continue to grow and thrive. I look forward to continuing to work with each of you on these important issues. And again, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Joyce for his work here in the committee today as well, and bringing perspective, again, from all across the country. And I'd now like to ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit their statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And if there is no further business to come before the committee, we are now adjourned. Thank you.